A warm welcome and thank you for joining us on today's episode of the program Inside the Real Estate. Today's episode promises to be a very exciting one as we'll be looking at data collection in the housing sector. An expert is with us here in the studio to have that conversation. But first, let's go on a quick break. We'll be back shortly. I am MKO Balogun.
When the city is getting too loud, you need a home. Home is love, peace, and tranquility. Home is Housing TV Africa. Housing TV Africa, your first in housing news.
Welcome back. Joining me on today's conversation is Dr. MKO Balogun, the Group CEO, GPFI Group. It's such a pleasure having you today in the studio. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. We are going to talk about data collection in the housing sector. And being that Nigeria has, a shortfall of housing deficit, affordable housing here and there, every day we preach affordable housing, we talk about affordable housing. But then for me, I feel that data collection, I wouldn't say it has been omitted as part of or one of the reasons why we don't have affordable housing in this country. So that's why we want to talk about that particular topic. So quickly, I'll just get a review from you as an expert in the industry to give us a review of data collection in the housing sector in Nigeria.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's good to be here, and first to say well done to Housing TV for all the work you do.
Thank you.
So making a lot of impact in the industry. So as a background, we must first understand when we say housing and data. Over the years, we have always said we are short, we don't have enough houses. There's deficit in housing. But you see, go around cities, you find a lot of houses that are unoccupied. And that's where the challenge is, because there's always a mismatch between what is required and what is being produced. I was having a conversation recently with a journalist, and we were talking about why are we complaining that government, for instance, the rebased GDP that's currently being worked on by MBS is going to have our sector growing bigger than oil and gas. And he said, how? What are the drivers? And I said, there are a lot of development in our sector, construction, housing, but it's largely driven by government. And when government drives housing, government is focused on the needs, on the requirements, because they will produce houses that people require. Whereas on the private side, we produce houses based on our resources, not based on requirements. And that's where the issue of data, what do we really require? We have demographic study. We know how many people are in Nigeria. We know the age range. We know the number of people who are working. We know people who are dependent. This data is available, but we're not putting those data into use when it comes to defining our requirements in housing. So when we say we are housing deficits, in which area? So you talk about affordable housing or social housing, because there's also that conversation between affordable or social. I always believe that it's nothing like affordable housing. It's better called affordable living, because there's a lot more going into affordability than just the house. There's a lot of, that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, exactly.
But the topic of data for housing development is critical. And I remember the last Minister of Housing, challenged, that conversation.
Yes.
That we always ban 20 million, 25 million around without any substance. And understand something is already being done by the current Ministry of Housing around on that. So it's very important. And that data cannot just be defined as this is the shortfall of housing. It must give us a sense of what type of housing we're looking at. Who are the people that require the housing? How do we provide those houses? And we can strata it. And without the data, you will not be able to do. The second thing that data is also going to use is that S for planning. So we do a lot of city planning. We do a lot of housing development planning without data. Because 3 months ago, I was having a conversation with MD of Great City Kigali. It's a new development in Kigali. And one of the things they're doing in the city they're doing is to put everybody in the city. So without creating different communities, but within the same zone. You are not going to have zone for the middle class, zone for the lower class. It's because they have data. They understand that in a community, a lot of people, you have the entry-level users of property and development. You have workers who are just starting their life in a single room. And I also remember that if you look at China's model, China's model of housing is also because there is data. They know that when somebody joins the housing chain today, for the next 15 years, is moving from, maybe every 3 years, it moves from single to double. Because his family growth, his income grows, and the demand for more space increases. And so they plan the housing around that. So that's the importance of data that we need to look at in Nigeria. Whatever we're doing today should be very holistic. Yes, we will not have data. We've always used mouth and conjecture and everybody and assumptions, and everybody from different perspectives have different numbers depending who you are talking to. But whatever we're working on, or whatever we should work on, should be such that it can be used for both social and economic planning. Because at the end of the day, if you're a private sector person and you want to invest in housing and you want to do development, you need that data to say, you know what, where is the need, so that I can put my money into that need. Not that you're just going to get in land and start building, and 6 months, 1 year, 3 years down the line, the house is still vacant because you have not provided housing for the people that require the housing. And so that's the purpose data. And when government is thinking about intervention in housing, they also have the data. Okay, these categories of people, they may not be able to afford full housing. What can we do to provide subvention, provide intervention? And that's the same data that is required. When we talk about economic planning within housing development, when we're talking about water infrastructure, it's the same thing. Because if you plan a housing development for 200 people, you cannot provide resources for 50. But if you design an area for 200 and that area goes to 1,000, then it becomes a problem because your infrastructure is designed for only 200. So that's what data. Because you find in Lagos, for instance, you find when government does road to a new area, a lot of developers go and build houses. The road has not been expanded to carry the volume of people. So you start having traffic. Exactly. You talk about waste, it becomes a social issue. You talk about water. So these are part of the things that data. So it's not just the units that data is going to be used for, but everything that will support the development of a proper social ecosystem.
Thank you so much for sharing your review on the data landscape in Nigerian's housing ecosystem. So let's move to why do we need research of data in the housing sector? Apart from the fact that we need it, one of the reasons why we do need it is to have all the accuracy as to how we can be able, or how the government can be able to provide.
Statistics are always used to do planning. Without it, you can't do any planning. You can't really define the impact of an economic sector without data, without information. Today we don't have. So whatever information we have that is available today about the impact of the housing sector is not real, because it's not based on any real data, and that's important. As I said, that is private sector, government intervention, or investment. That's what you need it for. And I remember another conversation I had, during Buhari era, the government during COVID. I wanted to stimulate the economy through housing. And, generally has me the question, why is that possible? Housing has the biggest impact in any economy because there are so many nodes to housing. The construction, everybody involved. You can have building one house. You know how many people that is involved in building? It's just like a car, the components. So that's the pull effect. But you don't have data. You're not going to be able to do anything to say, okay, if the economy needs to grow to this level, government, the current president says we want to take our economy to so level. That's the question. How can housing play a role in that transformation? But we need information, we need data. And there is need. So we know that we have established how there is need. But how do we quantify? How do we stratify the need in the industry? We don't have. And so research...
So how can we go about that?
So there are structures. Data, the research on data in any economy is not something outside the purview of the National Bureau of Statistics or private sector involvement or government. And there are even private organizations in Nigeria that have been doing industry research, providing data. So there are structures to be followed. What I said is that it should be holistic, so that we're not just focused on the conversation of the number, because most things that we come to our head is, what's the gap? How many houses do we need? No, it's beyond that. There are so many things that should go into that research, so that we say we need 20 million housing units. How many categories of that? Because that unit is just 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. So we need to say, okay, out of the 20 million, how many of them are 1 bedrooms? How many of them are 2 bedrooms? Where are they going to be? Where is the demand? So if we look at the cities across Nigeria, where is the population densities? How do we, create housing around? I talk about affordable living. So if you build a development in a place where the people who are going to use it are 30, 40 kilometers of work and livelihood away from it, you have not helped them, because they're going to spend all their money. So you are giving them houses that are cheap, that are affordable, but you have not added to their livelihood. You are creating stress. There will be medical issues, there will be economic issues. So those are the things that, where is the work? I remember I attended a conference in Kenya, and one of the UN Habitat leads spoke about this development in Mexico, where 600,000 units was developed and nobody was living there. Why? Because it was built away from where people require them. So that's what data. Where are people working? What kind of houses do they require? So we must understand the people within that community, what resources, what infrastructure is even needed to support them. So you don't want to just build 200 housing units and the road there is for 50 houses. And you create more economic challenges and stress for the people. So
talk to us about your company and what you do, what you are into.
So GPFI started 25 years. Actually, we're going to celebrate our 25 years anniversary in July, and we're going to get Housing TV involved.
We'll definitely be there.
We already fixed a date, and we're putting together a program. We're the pioneer FM company in Nigeria, and one of the biggest in Africa. So what we do basically is to support organizations, no matter your size, no matter what you do. We believe that every organization that uses building, no matter what you do, restaurant, hotel, medical, stadium, whatever, airport, you need somebody to pay attention to ensuring that the reason why you have created that is delivered. So an hotel wants people to use the place and ensure that you continue to have increase in patronage. The same thing, you don't want people to come to your clinic. They come with headache, they go with pneumonia. So that's what we do. We support organizations to ensure that the reason, the purpose they've created the asset is met. Second is that we work with them to increase the value of the asset. The third is that whoever is using the asset, employees, or visitors, or people, their life is better, because that's the purpose of asset management. So, and that's what we do, as a business. What we've done over the years as being the pioneer is to remain relevant in the industry, and we've grown from being just a Nigerian company to be a Pan-African country. Our company is in 18 countries in Africa today. One of the 5 largest FM companies in Africa. We support multinationals across the continent. We've also done two more things. One is that we focus on development. So everywhere we operate as a company, we ensure that we enable our team members to improve their knowledge and better for them. Because when you're better equipped at what you do, you can deliver better and be happier. Second is that we have created economies. Because I always tell my colleagues that every country where we've had a GPFI, we have created a new business, a new team of entrepreneurs within the economy, and that's what we've done as a business.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So let's look at facility management. What would you say is the status of this in our country? So
in terms of understanding what facilities is, we're getting there. Okay. If you asked me this question 5-7 years ago, I'll tell you we're nowhere. But we're getting there. There's been a lot of drive to create awareness, both at the private sector, government, and I'm happy to also say that during the former Minister of Housing's era, there was the maintenance policy that was issued by the federal government, which we were all involved from the industry to put together. And so which tells us that, okay, so it's not just the private sector component, but one of the things we've been trying to do is to see how do we create a law that makes it, because you look at, and I always analyze budgets, federal, state budgets, and we're doing 40-45% investment in infrastructure, but you go and look at the component for maintenance of those infrastructures, probably non-existent or insignificant, and there's no way you can sustain infrastructure if you are not planning and budgeting to ensure that you're maintaining them. So that's one of the things we want to drive. So we need to work, better, and we've been talking to the National Assembly for some time. So we have a bill currently at the National Assembly. Actually, the third time we are going to the National with the same bill to see how we can get that, so that we can enable every agency, every MDA, everybody in the country, every government in the country that has access, because we have. Of course. There are buildings all over the place, but there is no plan, there is no policy, there is no guide, there is no even budgeting to say you have an asset, how do you manage an asset where there is no budget for it? So that's part of it. As we go around our airport, we spend a lot of money to renovate, but after that, what happens? 2-3 months, we're doing train stations now across Nigeria. It's a lot of investment, both state and federal. But we need to ensure that we have a system to sustain them. And that's what fast management is all about. And you can only do that if there is a national policy, if there is a government law, if there is a law that drives that. If you are spending X amount of money to develop an asset, you must budget X amount of money to ensure that asset is maintained over its life. Okay,
hold your thoughts there, Dr. Balogun, and let's go on a short break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about reliable, data collection tools. Yeah, so viewers, let's go on a short break. We'll be back shortly.
Get credible and authentic housing news at your fingertips by downloading the Housing TV mobile app. You can also join the African International Housing Show live from across the globe through the Housing TV mobile app. The mobile app features live streaming and trending housing news. You can locate the AIHS venue via the app, network with AIHS seasoned speakers, and live chat with exhibitors. You can also order house or building materials at AIHS via this app. Download the Housing TV mobile app now from the App Store and Google Play Store. And don't forget to click on the notification button. Available for both iOS and Android users. Housing TV is also on Star Times, channel 149 decoder.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is the program Inside the Real Estate and Housing TV Africa. Still in the studio with Dr. MKO Balogun, the Group CEO, GPFI Group, and we're discussing data collection in the Nigerian housing sector. Dr. Balogun, let's look at reliable data collection tools. What are they, and how can they be used in getting accurate data in the housing sector?
So the answer is very straight. MBS has done a fantastic job over the years. You know, gathering data on the Nigerian economy. Every quarter they publish reports. If you go to their platform, you see, and most of them are surveys, household, you know, economic survey.
Are they really accurate?
Yeah,
Okay.
because they are based on real data. They are not conjectures. They are not, you know, information that somebody sat on his desk and
then came
populated.
up with
No,
okay.
these are based on, and I've responded
Oh,
to a couple of such in the industry. So that's the easiest and the cheapest mode of data gathering. You want to do, we have population, we have National Population Commission.
Yes, commission.
So there is data sitting with them. We have Nigerian immigration. There's data sitting because we're doing passports. In your passport data, you have all the information in the world that you require. We have banking information. I remember during COVID, I was listening to the former governor of Kaduna State, and he said that when we were trying to determine the low people in Kaduna State to intervene, they went to their call. They went to the telecoms companies and said, give us data of the people who make the least calls, those who do 500 naira per month, who they're only keeping their lines alive so that they can receive messages from their children. So there's data. We just need to aggregate those data for the use that we want. First, we must define what are we looking for. Okay. And as I said, our data is not just we say we need, how many housing units do we need? It should be broad and wide and look at it from the point of view of the national population. What is our current national population? What's our projected national population? And from there we can go to what data do we have on the current housing across various categories, and start, plugging the gaps in communities. As I mentioned also, you cannot do a nationwide blanket survey. You have to situate it per community, per zone, by area, by population, to know in this area there is industry. So you go to Ikeja, you go to Ilopeju, is manufacturing. You have a different demographic. You go to a place where is university. You go to a place where there is, retail. You go to a place, and they're going to be different information. And that's the kind of data we're looking at. And as I said, in terms of the tools required, we already have them. We've always had debates in Nigeria. Okay, why do we have multiple? You have national ID, you have international passport, you have BVN. You also compelling, you are compelling NIM, you are compelling telecoms, and everybody. So all these data are available. HBS has data. Can we aggregate them? NESD does research on their own, Nigerian Economic Summit Group. They also have some data about various sectors of the economy and how they are impacting the national development. So the information is available to some extent. It is how do we transform it to the way we need it, and from there we can see what gap from the current available data that we need to add more or review and add to what we're looking for in the housing industry.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Dr. Balogun. So before we wrap it up, what are your, it's a new year. So what are your anticipations, your wishes for the data landscape in Nigerian's housing ecosystem?
My expectation is that by media, we should have, tick the first box, raw data. It may not be the level, to the level that we want, but at least we have some sense of information. That we can have a sit down and said, is it meeting what we require? And we can take it. So that by the time the government is planning the next budget, when they're planning the next development plan, there is information, there is data for them to use that is real. That either you are a private, as I always mention, today in Nigeria, private sector developers they just build blind. Because the resources is there, they assume that, because somebody is building there, or there are young people, let me go and build a house. There is no data to help them. And that's important. So even when the data is available, it can generate its own money. We can use whatever resources we've used to create data can be used to generate back, because at the end of the private sector will be ready to pay for it because they need it.
Those data,
So that is, for me, my aspiration. My media, let's have, first, raw data. We can look at it, Does it? And luckily, we're going to have the, Africa Housing Show
for 2025.
2025. It can be a component of our discussion.
Of course, we had a data collection at last year's AIHS.
So what we're going to be doing this year is not to talk about collection. Is that
exactly.
Where are we?
Where are we?
What data do we have? We can have a presentation of the data is available. We can interrogate the data as they address all the various components. Then we can give the team the next challenge by December or by next IHS. Let's have something that we can host on the platform, and people can subscribe and pay for its use because they know it's useful for them and they need it. And national planning, state planning, economy, anybody who is doing planning in the housing sector knows that they cannot do any planning without that. That's mine.
Thank you so much, Dr. MKO Balogun, Group CEO, GPFI Group. It was such an amazing conversation today on data collection in the housing sector. We hope to have you again in the studio to have another conversation. Thank you. So viewers, we'll call it a wrap on today's episode of the program Inside the Real Estate. You can watch this episode and subsequent episodes by subscribing to our YouTube channel, Housing TV Africa. And do not forget to follow us on all of our social media platforms. And Housing TV Africa mobile app is available on Google Play Store and Apple Store to stay informed wherever you go. I am Nimona Bagodo. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.